Welcome. Today we're going to get to something that really intrigues me, and it is the idea, and I've spoken about this before, but it's the idea that basic, common, natural human needs that go unaddressed become issues that lead to problems that lead to um, disorders. So it's when our functionality in the various aspects of life are interrupted, they're delayed, they're slowed down, or they're basically deactivated, shut down. And so what I wanted to do was take something that was fun and use it in the realm of therapy or some way that it could help us. So we're going to do a little unboxing here. Let's take a look at what we have. And people who enjoy comics or movies will recognize this right away, this product. Right. Okay, so there you have it. And again, what we're doing today is we want to use some tools, and I'm for any tool, especially if it's something that can be fun or interesting. And we want to use a tool in order to help us get what we need. And humans are very complex. We need lots of things. And unfortunately, at a very early age, there is an opportunity to not get what you need. So when you're very first born, if you're born in a hostile area, it could be some places getting bombed by military, it could be places very impoverished. Could just be born into an environment that's got people who are using substances. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And so what happens is we don't get what we need, such as things such as attention as an infant. And there's studies that show just how dramatic the effects are for that. And there's just something in general called ACEs. So that's the adverse childhood experiences, and they're anything from having a parent who leaves or who passes away at an early age, especially violently, any kind of traumas, and those things can happen at any time during our development. And so what happens is we end up having a void where we should have had some sort of interaction or the fulfillment of some need that we have. Could be safety, could just be love and care, but not having enough money to stay in a home, so being without a home. So let's take a look at this. All right, this is an Infinity Gauntlet from the Avengers movie, and if you remember in the movie, there was a golden one, and it was used by a character in the movie who was, let's just say, having some issues of his own. And so that was kind of used for a bad. We want to use one that's for good. So I chose this one. And what I want to get to with this is that there's just different ways to utilize things that are in existence today. Some things are fun and from movies. Some things are very serious, or some things are in nature, right? There's things you can do, and we want to be creative in establishing, guarding, and maintaining our mental health. And so there's some issues that we have. And so what I wanted to talk about today was the fact that there's some things that can happen early on in our childhoods, our infancy, or just our youthful development. And then those things persist and they kind of snowball and they get stuck in our mind, our thought processes, our heart, our emotional responses. Those things are affected. And so we want to take time to find a creative way to look at and identify some of the things that we're missing, and then some of the things that we can do, not just coping skills, but honestly, it's more about developing some of the aspects of our growth and understanding and thought processing, the lens with which we see people, places, and things and experiences, responses, reactions, interactions, and just the relationship that humans have to everything in our environment, everything in the world, the news, um, even things like the weather. Sometimes when the sun doesn't come out, people feel there's a seasonal condition when the sun is gone for the wintertime. but there's other people who love the wintertime. So just being able to utilize what's good in the world, what's good about us, what's strong about us, and the people around us. There's systems, there's processes, there's people, there's agencies, there's programs, there's exercises, there's ways of thought. And we really want to be creative because we only get this one chance to live here, and we want the most out of it. We want the high quality of life. And a lot of that, I mean, almost all of that takes work. But first, you have to identify what you're missing, what there is um, out there to help you get what you're missing, to protect it, to guard it, and then um, to maintain it, but then also to elevate it. There's always something we can improve on. So with this gauntlet, what I wanted to do was take the idea that in the movie, this he was a villain. He was going around. He's collecting these infinity stones. So there's one spot here, two, three, four, five, and then a sixth one right here. I want to pretend like this one here is kind of um, the key stone. So what that person was doing in the movie is going around and he was collecting these stones from different parts of the galaxy, taking them from different places and people. And these stones were powerful stones. So I don't remember each one of them, but there was one for time and space. There was a mind stone. There was different ones, and each one had a power, and it gave that person, um, an accumulation of power. So he was amassing power through identifying these stones, acquiring them, and then using them together to do something powerful. So in the movie, he was, let's just say, misguided. But what we want to do is we want to take that concept and we want to do something positive. Okay, so here are the stones here. So what we want to do is we want to use our imagination, right? There's some human beings are complex. We have lots of needs. We have lots of issues that come up naturally. And if we have developed some of these elements and aspects of humanity that really serve us as powerful tools, then we're able to cope with things. We're able to have resiliency. So the ability to bounce back from issues and encounters that are uncomfortable, maybe negative, sometimes traumatic. And so what I wanted to do was use this concept of there's a couple things that are involved here. One of them is identifying what human beings are capable of. What is it that we can do really well? Well, the examples go throughout human history, right? You can look at various leaders who took the power of leadership and did really wonderful things for everybody that they could, anyone they could reach, and they set an example for the rest of us. You have people who volunteered um, and really gave philanthropically and just really as much as they could invest in anyone who they encountered. Then you had people who, helped establish or maybe implement justice. So there's all kinds of things that we can do, and each one of those things that we can do can actually be thought of, as a powerful trait that you'd like to learn and maybe even master to a certain degree. So what I like to do is I'd like to think of, number one, we have to identify what it's not what we're missing so much as what's out there that we could acquire as far as characteristics that are positive, power, the power to be truthful, honest, the ability to bounce back, resiliency, all these kind of things that are out there that are positive that we would like to emulate or just have in our repertoire as a person who's alive on the earth. So once you identify the good that's out there and you start selecting some of that you'd like to, exemplify and live out, the next part of it is really, how do I do it? And I like to think of it as, in therapy, you have therapists who say they give out homework. What I like to do is I like to give out a quest. So if you think of a quest, it's not just something that you want and you're pursuing, but your whole life kind of, there's tangents of your life that go in different directions, you might say, but a quest involves your entire life. So wherever you go, it's still that quest. It's just that right now you have a focus that's different than maybe it was yesterday or last year. So I like the idea of a quest because you can utilize what you're trying to practice or the entire time that you're on that quest. So what is there that's positive that's out there? Make it a quest. And then now you're going to do a couple things. We'll get into those things later on, but you're going to learn, you're going to do research, you're going to practice, you're going to try, you're going to fail, you're going to try again, and so on and so forth. But what we'd like to do is, let's say, for instance, your ultimate goal was to really establish and protect and guard and build and develop self-esteem. So to me, what I would say is that this bigger stone, and it's always going to be the big stone in this process. The bigger stone is always the bigger concept, the bigger achievement, the overall goal. And these other stones can be thought of as objectives or side quests that lead to this bigger goal. So, for instance, if this is my self-esteem stone, I wouldn't put it in until very last because that I need to accomplish these objectives in order to establish this goal. So if that's my self-esteem stone, I might say that this stone would be my dignity stone. And you have to go on a quest to achieve this dignity stone. So how do you do that? Well, I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but you have to identify, you have to look up what's the definition of dignity and what does that have to do with me and what people in history have, set an excellent example of establishing dignity, protecting their dignity, and exemplifying a person who has dignity. So you have to make a list. First, you do your research, make a list of some of the practices and lifestyle changes that need to occur for dignity to be established and for it to be meaningfully, um, implemented. So most of the things that you're going to do with any of these uh, aspects of humanity, you're going to have to put them into practice for them to happen. So, but the research and all that stuff. And so what I would say is that when you're doing the research and you're looking into things and you're looking for people and places and processes that would facilitate the accomplishment of one of these stones, like for instance dignity, you can keep this in your pocket, right? And just every day, just know that it's in your pocket. Maybe take it out and just roll it around on your fingers and say, you know what, I want to establish dignity for myself. I think that's very powerful, and it it does, like, it sets a line. This, I'm not going to be involved in this. I'm not going to waste my time with that. I'm not going to put my emotional energy into this and that. And I reduce the drama. I reduce my overreactions, my sensitivity, and I establish dignity by not doing certain things and by doing certain things. And then once you really understand what you're trying to achieve and you have some examples of that, then you go out and you practice that. Once you've practiced it to the point where you feel the difference and people can maybe notice the difference, maybe you've got some feedback on that, um, then you can go ahead and place this into the first slot, right? So how does it go? There you go. It goes right in there. And so it doesn't mean that you've mastered dignity, but you've put in the practice, and I'm going to go into later on just kind of the details of what it, and this is just to help guide, right? This is not the rules of establishing dignity or any of these elements of humanity that you want to develop, but it's just some place to start. And I'm going to talk about that later on. So we're trying to achieve self-esteem. That's our overall goal. And we've looked at, researched, and put into practice some things that can help us and maybe restore, reclaim our dignity. And so with trial and error and some time and maybe some feedback and a feeling that we're getting closer, you might have to read some books. There might be some great TED Talks or some other things on video. You definitely want to meet with some people that you believe have dignity and ask them, ask good questions about how do you maintain that? What does it take? What challenges that? When the last time? What was the hardest challenge to maintaining your dignity? Once you put the effort into the research and then you've practiced it and you've tried and failed and then tried again and succeeded and failed, and once you have that going, because that is a never-ending process that we all are engaged in every day. anyone who's trying to establish any of these things. So you're never going to master it. It's never going to be done. But once you get that positive feeling and feedback coming, and that's established, it's an established effort in your lifestyle. These behaviors and thought processes and practices that go into establishing, maintaining dignity. Then you put the stone in. Now we go back to our goal, um, and that's that we want to have self-esteem, very strong self-esteem. So what might be involved? Well, we don't want to be arrogant, but we want self-esteem. So what does it mean to be arrogant? Well, we need to look at that, but we also really care about what does it mean to be humble? What does it mean to be practical and to be balanced in your lifestyle, in your sense of self, in the midst of other human beings who are maybe family, friends, and so on, coworkers. It really doesn't pay to be arrogant. But humility, there's a balance to that as well. And so you look up humility, you look up arrogance, you do the research on what does it mean to be humble? Who set one of the best examples of being humble? And you the same thing you did for dignity, you'll do for humility. And once you put it in practice and it's been challenged and you have your ups and downs and your good days and your bad days, then when you start getting that feedback and that good feeling, boom, you put in your humility stone, and we're getting closer, right? And this is just an example, but let's take another one. What else will we need if we're talking about self-esteem? Well, honestly, it really is important that we understand the power of forgiveness. And so let's name this one the forgiveness stone. And so it's forgiving others because that takes the burden off of us, not holding a grudge, not wasting emotional energy, adjusting negatively to somebody's presence because of something that happened in the past. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to stay mad at somebody. And think about it like this. If you were having a good day and you were smiling and things were going well, and then all of a sudden somebody that you don't like or you have a grudge against comes around the corner, and then you shift into this negative emotional state. I mean, that's something happening to you, something you're doing to yourself, and something that you have to maintain. And it does take energy. So if we have the forgiveness stone, it's not just forgiving other people, which does absolutely takes a burden off of us, and restores our emotional energy back to us, but it's forgiving ourselves. And there's a lot to that, right? But once you get going at that and you practice it, and there's lots of different ways to do that, and there's a whole bunch of people that have books and everything else, then you can put in your forgiveness stone. And so now that you have your forgiveness stone in here, we go back to our overall goal of high self-esteem. And it is just critical when you see what low self-esteem or even the extreme self-loathing, when you see what that does to people, it shuts them down, it shuts them out. The hope is gone. The reason, the main reason why one would do good things for oneself, which is the next right thing to do. So don't get in that fight. Don't push the pedal down in your car to catch up to somebody who did something to you. Road rage, like, the don'ts and the do's. Eat right, start exercising, call your friend, go for a walk. All these things, they're not worth doing if you don't like yourself. And so it's very detrimental, the self-loathing and low self-esteem. So if that's our goal, which is an absolutely worthy goal, so just overall, this is just an example, but this is an example where you're going to go for different elements that could possibly facilitate or maybe thought of as synergists for something that is an ultimate goal, which is that high self-esteem. So we have two more stones. It's up to you to think about or to research, however you want to do it. What other elements go into building self-esteem, right? What other elements of human functionality, human, cognitive processing, humanity in general? What is it about the heart, the mind, the spirit, the soul, the body, and just being alive that goes into having, high self-esteem, solid self-esteem? It could be compassion, because compassion can help you, and it can be useful to care about others. And there's no doubt that caring about others, volunteering, giving to charity, spending your time with people in need, it builds something very powerful in us, and it leads to a higher self-esteem. So There's different ones, and you can choose the ones that you want. You build up your kind of synergist stones, if you will, and then finally, once you get everything that you need, then at the very end, I would hesitate. I would just hold off on placing this stone and just start practicing these. Practice, 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 practice. Just make sure, maybe for instance, in a week you do all of these one time, something that exercises that. And then when you really, really feel like you've done some good work, you maybe got some good feedback, you've done some good research, you've, you visualize, you maybe even some meditation to where you can, whatever it takes, and you'll know. And I'm not telling you when to place this, but when you're ready, go ahead and place this final stone. And this gauntlet, it takes batteries, and every time you put one of these in, it'll make a sound. And I mean, that's kind of that, it's a very satisfying sound. I watched the video on this, and each one of those, and I really suggest that you take your time with this. So for instance, if it takes you 2 months to get this stone, and it takes you 4 months to get this one, and it takes you half a year to get that one, and it takes you a year to get this one, I really suggest doing that, because one of the things that I like to remind, myself about, is that everything that's worth doing, everything that you really want, it does take time. It takes investment. But if you want to do it well, it takes practice, just like anything in athletics, anything with learning a musical instrument, learning a trade. You're going to have to put in the time. And what happens with a lot of people is they put in that time, and they forget about trying to achieve the goal, which that's okay, because they just put in the time. They just concentrate on the objective. They just go to work every day. They just try their best every day. They go to practice every day. And they forget about mastery. It's good to forget about mastery, and it really is about the practice and trying to achieve that objective. Self-esteem is critical, uh, and we deserve to have it. We need to have it. And so to build it, the longer you resist putting this in, the more you work on these objectives, and the more it really literally fits, right? When you finally put this in there, you feel like you've done the work, you know what aspects go into it, and and it's a good feeling. You feel like you deserve to put that in there. Now, I believe that when you put each one of these in, they make their own individual sounds, but I think when you put this last one in, I think it makes a special sound. In the movie, the villain, he once he got all the stones, he put his hand in the gauntlet and he snapped his fingers, and he made kind of basically a bad wish that did bad stuff. What I would say is, once you put this last stone in, you can put your hand in there, and I wouldn't recommend snapping, because that is kind of that is the shortcut to everything. We wish we could snap our hands. We wish you could make a wish. But I would put the gauntlet on, and I think it makes a certain sound, and just have it on and feel like I'm putting in the work. So this last part that I want to say is that, after you achieve one of your goals, which is that last stone, then I recommend that you pick another goal and you do the exact same thing. So what's another, tremendous goal? Well, honestly, forgiveness is. And while it was a objective stone before, it could be an ultimate goal for this one. So forgiveness, what does it take to forgive? Well, this could be the perspective stone. When you put things in perspective, you can come up with a different overall, understanding of what that is. So there's certain things that if it was a long time ago, and you know what, I'll give you, this is good. This goes back to the movie. You can make this the time stone. In the movie, there was a time stone. If you want forgiveness, some of the things that help with forgiveness are time passing, a different perspective. If you where you might have been catastrophizing, you take something that happened and it was important. It was meaningful to you, but it was not as critical as you might have thought it was or felt it was at that time. So there's different things that we can do to encourage forgiveness and have a increase our capacity to let some things go, to redirect our thoughts, to get past some things. So there's different things like that, and you come up with those, and you build that out. But this time for forgiveness, and then next thing you know, you put in that time. Like I said, get some good feedback, do your research, and practice, practice, practice. And then once you get that going, you finally will put in your forgiveness stone. And honestly, there should be no rush. If you're going to do this and, within 3 weeks get something done, then you're not using it like I had imagined it. Okay. So the way I imagined it, it could take, for sure, it should take many months. If you're super serious, but hopefully not too self-critical, it could take a year. It could take 2 years. And I'm just saying for one of these objectives. So if, you know, if you had it where it took just 1 year to do one of these objectives, one of these components to the overall goal, you just want to make sure that you're not too self-critical, right? Because we do want to uh, recognize progress, and you can do it over and over. You can just take these stones out and go back for the same objective again, just going out to achieve, or like I said, have a quest for each one of these objective stones. You just do it over and over. I want to meet new people for that same objective. I want to make new coping skills. I want to have new practices. I want new everything, and redo the entire quest for each of these stones. And it can take as long as you want. And then finally, your goal stone, which sounds painful, but that's a gallstone. So I just want to just kind of start with that, and then I'm going to do some other things in this video. But we'll start with that concept.
let's take a look at some examples. Let's say we wanted to do a series of objectives that led to us accomplishing the power of individual well-being. Now, this is just suggestions, so what you can do is you can just kind of initially activate the gauntlet. And then remember, this takes time. But let's say, for instance, you have the physiological needs stone. We're starting with that. So that's our need for shelter, food, air, just the basics of survival. And if you kind of recognize where we're going with this is starting with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in that sense. So if you don't have those kind of things, or if you didn't when you were young, it does matter. And so you want to make sure you have those. So you have to research what those needs are, and then you have to go after them and take it very seriously. So let's say we get it over a couple months, maybe we work with a social worker or whatever we need to do to get what we need so that our physiological needs are being met. Then we can say that we have our physiological needs stone. We'll place it in the gauntlet and it lights up. Very cool. Then let's say we have our safety stone, which let's just say that safety in general in a neighborhood that's not particularly threatening, in a household that's not particularly threatening, our safety. It's very serious, right? And so some people take it for granted, and some people are being abused, and they've come to believe that that's normal. We have to work against that. Once we get our safety in order, we have our safety stone, we can place it in the gauntlet. Awesome. Then let's say that mental well-being is something we want to achieve. That takes time. There's a lot of things that go into that. But once we think we have that, we can have our mental well-being stone. We can place it in the slot. All right. Let's say that there's a knowledge stone, right? That we decide that there's a knowledge stone, and we want to make sure that we are growing our knowledge and that that's based on the truth. So the knowledge stone in my little world here is also known as the truth stone. Okay, so let's say we seek knowledge, we find out the truth about our situation, and that's socially, culturally, everything. We know medically where we stand, our health, all that stuff. Once we get the knowledge stone or truth stone, place that in the slot. We're good. Let's say that we want to seek out our spiritual well-being. And so let's say that there's a spiritual stone and we want to look. We can search all over the world. You can ask all the people that you know. These days it is a global village. Human beings can chat over global internet and so on and so forth. Once you get your spiritual stone, then you can place it. All right. And let's just say that for the sake of sticking with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we want to end with the self-actualization stone. And let's just say that that's our goal, is to reach self-actualization. You can look that up and see more precisely what that refers to. But let's say we get it done, and it took us 7 years to do it. But once we get it done, we did good. So, you can just slip on the gauntlet, think about what you've done. Basically, if you kept a journal, you can look over some of the key points. But mostly you're trying to live this out, trying to apply this to your life, and you're trying to reap the benefits of achieving, even searching for, being on the journey that is trying to achieve these objectives. All right. Let's say we have an objective. We want to basically have effective influence with communication, people, relationships, so on. So let's say that we want to start, so it's the power of influence that we seek. And let's just say, and I'm making this up, so you can come up with your own, this is just a little bit of ideas, a little bit of ideas for what you could do. So let's say the first objective we wanted to do was make sure that our self-esteem was where it needs to be so that we can feel like we're worthy of having influence and and that, if we do positive self-esteem, then we can have positive influence. Let's say we put in the time, we work at it, and we get our self-esteem stone. Place it in the slot. Accidentally activated the self-esteem stone there. But let's say the next one is a communication stone, right? Because we're going to be influencing people and we want to be able to communicate at a high level. And so we do a communication stone. All right. Let's say after that, we want to have empathy in our communication. So we have an empathy stone. After that, let's say that we have the need for knowledge, so that when we do influence people, we do it as somebody who's done the research and has, a good understanding of what they're trying to do with their influence. So let's say knowledge stone. All right. And with that, but it is I want to be more specific. Let's say there's a research stone. So we really want to focus on researching and making sure that we're knowledgeable about what we're speaking on, and the influence that we're trying to utilize is based on research, sound knowledge that exists already. All right. So then let's say at the end of that, we seek the influence stone, which, like I said before, some of these things, they can be both goals and they can be also objectives. So then we have our influence stone, we place it. And we did it. Now let's say we wanted the power of wealth. Okay. So definitely people can do this differently. But one of the things you need to know is, what is wealth? What kind of wealth did you want to acquire? And, what are the pros and cons and the risks of having wealth, so on. So let's say we want to start with the knowledge stone. All right. So we get the knowledge stone. We do that work. All right. And that, I want to combine research with that one. But let's say next we want the communication stone, because a lot of wealthy people, they're very good at communicating. And so let's say the communication stone is next. Let's say you're entrepreneurially gifted and you really want to develop your creativity. You don't want to do what everyone else did. You don't want the same kind of business. So then we're going to utilize a creativity stone, also known as a imagination stone. We do some research. We work on developing our creativity and our imagination. And then we have our creativity stone or imagination stone. Now let's say we need a trust stone. Why, do you ask? Well, let's just say you need to know who to trust, but also you need to be able to trust yourself and your own judgment. So let's just say we're going to work on our trust stone. We get that done. We're good. All right. And then we want an influence stone, right? Before that was a goal. Influence was a goal, but here we're going to use it as a part of a different system that we're building. And so here we develop our influence stone, which we can say that as a goal that we had before, we can utilize that stone because we've already worked on it. So influence stone, we got that. And then just because our goal is power, it has to do with power. This is power of wealth, but one of the things I like to keep in mind is that any kind of power, if you're trying to change the world, that doesn't usually go too well. And you can watch the movie and you can see that that didn't work out for the villain in that movie. So one of the biggest powers is the power to control ourselves and to, commit to things and to do things and to have self-restraint. And it really has to do with us controlling ourselves. And so this last goal would be self-determination stone. So if you're really determined, you can accomplish just about anything. But there's also self-determination in the sense of realizing that you have the right to make choices, and many choices are up to you to make. So self-determination is both a determination from within the self, but it's also acknowledging that you have the right and the obligation to make certain decisions. So self-determination stone, that takes a lot of work, but let's put it in. All right, and then our final example is the power of tranquility. Now, tranquility is nice to have, and so let's take a look at what you might do for that one. So let's say that for tranquility, you really have to be in touch with reality. So let's go to a reality stone, because if you're not really dealing and connected with reality, it's really hard to have a tranquil life and just a peace of mind. Okay, so let's work on reality and getting in touch with it, having a good, strong connection to it. So a reality stone, place that. All right, let's say that your spiritual stone has already been acquired. And let's say you wanted to go to, you can have a God stone. And so it's not trying to be God, but it's having a connection with your higher power, if that's how you see it. All right, so let's put that in there because we want tranquility, remember? And some people find that with religion and or with God. All right, so now knowledge stone. This is in no particular order because you definitely want to have knowledge so that you can make good decisions and good choices, especially if you're trying to see yourself through the process of finding a religion or spiritual guidance. But let's say the knowledge stone is next. All right, super important. And this goes back to reality. And I kind of forgot that the reality stone, at least in my little world, is the same as the truth stone. So they're one and the same. But let's just say, since I forgot, that you have the reality stone and the truth stone. So we acquire the truth and good. Now, this one says, well, let's just say that this one is the altruism stone. So this is the idea that, you can really find peace and tranquility through helping others. And there's so many people that need help that you never run out of people to help, but there's just possibly there's an association or a real connection between feeling good about yourself and feeling good about humanity and feeling good about the world, just by giving some of your time and effort and sometimes finances, but the idea of helping people. So altruism stone in place. And then and this is just my opinion, but a lot of tranquility has to do with just being able to kind of control your own emotions, self-regulate, controlling your desires, controlling your fears, and just kind of not being as susceptible to some of the outside influences, but also being able to just make good decisions and kind of do the right thing when you need to. So this is the self-restraint stone. So one of the things that can aid with achieving tranquility is having good self-restraint. If you have good self-restraint, then maybe you can make some good decisions, kind of resist some impulsivity, and there's lots of other things. So let's say the self-restraint stone is the last one in this power of tranquility that we seek. And there you go. And just like in the movie, if you wanted to pretend like you were using one of these stones at any given time, like if let's say you were going out the door and you say, hey, you know what? I really want to stay attached to reality. So you can just kind of push the reality stone. It's pretty cool, just on your way out the door, say, hey, let's just stay connected to reality. Or you could say, you know what? I really want to do something for other people today. It's the weekend. I have some time. I'm going to push my altruism stone on the way out the door. And just go do something good. Trust stone. I need to work on my trust. So, hey, let's do this. I'm supposed to meet with somebody today. We'll see if we get along. I want to, have some trust. And so on and so forth. And then if you hit the big stone, it's like you're using all these powers together. And so you should be exponentially stronger and more powerful in whatever way your goal is, just by hitting this big stone. So let's hear the sound for that. And so this is just an example of how you can utilize something fun like this gauntlet and these stones to kind of internalize and visualize and kind of identify and kind of separate some of the details that go into helping objectives facilitate other objectives that lead to some goal that you might have in mind. All right, so that's my idea, and I hope it's helpful. Take care.